Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Today we're diving deep into Keith Kellogg's nomination as Special Envoy for Ukraine and Russia. It's a significant development, especially considering the ongoing conflict and his, well, let's say, unique perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely a complex situation. To really grasp Kellogg's approach, we need to start with his background. He was born in '44 into a military family.
Right.
And his career, it spans 3 decades of active duty. We're talking Vietnam, Panama, and the Gulf War.
His service record is impressive. He earned a Silver Star, a Bronze Star, and a Legion of Merit. That points to some serious contributions in leadership.
Absolutely.
And then there are the positions he held. 82nd Airborne Division, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, suggests a strong foundation in military doctrine and, strategic thinking.
Exactly. That background, it's really key to understanding how he sees foreign policy. He moved into politics in 2016, advising the Trump campaign.
Okay.
And that led to a bunch of important roles in the Trump administration: Executive Secretary and Chief of Staff of the National Security Council, Acting National Security Advisor,
Right.
and then National Security Advisor to Vice President Pence.
So deeply involved in the Trump administration's national security apparatus.
Yeah, you could say that. And consistently focused on Russia, China, and the Middle East throughout all those roles.
Which brings us to his 2024 nomination, right? Special Envoy for Ukraine and Russia. It needs Senate confirmation, of course, so there's that added layer of a political complexity. And it's a crucial position, especially now.
Absolutely. This conflict has global implications. It's a big deal.
Interesting that someone with such a strong military background is chosen for what's essentially a diplomatic position. What does that tell us?
Could be a clue about how the administration plans to approach the conflict. Kellogg, he really subscribes to this peace through strength philosophy, believes in using U.S. military might to achieve those diplomatic goals.
Peace through strength.
Yeah. And one of his most controversial ideas, using continued U.S. military aid as leverage to force both Ukraine and Russia into negotiations.
Okay. But that raises some pretty big questions. I mean, would this weaken Ukraine, embolden Russia? Could it be seen as putting pressure on a country that's already under attack?
Yeah, those are definitely concerns that have been raised. People are worried about the ethics of that kind of approach.
Right. Kellogg also talks a lot about the importance of U.S. military technology, maintaining that leadership, investment in advanced weaponry. He seems, well, skeptical of traditional diplomacy.
Favors a show of force.
Yeah.
He sees a strong military as the ultimate deterrent, believes that strength has to come before effective diplomacy.
So how does that translate into his vision for Ukraine and Russia specifically? What's he actually proposing?
For Ukraine, he wants to integrate Western defense systems, tackle corruption, and make aid conditional on progress with their internal affairs. Basically, he wants to see real improvements before they get full support.
And Russia? How do you engage with a nation that seems, intent on conflict?
He's talking about a two-pronged approach. Combine dialogue with shows of force through NATO exercises. Put pressure on Moscow, but leave that door open for diplomacy.
Sounds like walking a tightrope. But before we get into the potential fallout and how people are reacting to Kellogg's ideas, let's look at another key part of his profile: his loyalty to Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's generated a lot of debate. Can't ignore it when you're analyzing his potential role.
Absolutely. His support for Trump has been unwavering. Right from the campaign through the presidency. It's been well documented. He's appeared on conservative media defending Trump's policies, raises some questions about his impartiality.
For sure. That staunch loyalty has fueled concerns about bias. Can he really be an objective mediator with those close personal ties?
It's a big question mark. Could that loyalty to Trump actually make it harder for him to be an impartial mediator?
Yeah. Kellogg's nomination, it's definitely been met with a whole range of reactions, concerns mainly. People point to his military background, that hardline stance, and of course, those close ties to Trump, the folks who favor a more, I guess you could say, traditional diplomatic approach. They're worried his whole peace through strength philosophy could actually escalate things, make the conflict worse.
Some people also point to his support for some of Trump's more controversial foreign policy decisions, troop withdrawals, for example, what some saw as isolationist tendencies. The argument is that those moves hurt America's credibility on the world stage, and maybe even made things less stable globally.
Right. Critics see that as a bit of a red flag. They wonder if his approach really aligns with the bigger picture of diplomacy and international cooperation. Even within the Pentagon, among foreign policy experts and some of America's NATO allies, there's been pushback. specifically about his idea of using military aid as leverage in negotiations.
So the worry is that his approach could backfire, hurt Ukraine, alienate allies, and just make the whole region even more unstable.
It's a valid concern, definitely highlights the risks involved, but it's also important to acknowledge that he does have supporters, people who, well, generally share Trump's worldview. They like that firm stance.
Right. For conservative lawmakers and those who are loyal to Trump, Kellogg is seen as a strong leader, someone who can handle this crisis. They see his military experience as a plus, someone who can navigate a complicated situation and stand up to Russia.
They believe that peace through strength idea, that's the way to go, to stop aggression and protect U.S. interests. They trust his judgment, believe he'll deliver outcomes that benefit America.
So it's pretty polarized. You've got valid concerns and genuine support all swirling around this nomination.
Yeah, it really reflects the bigger political divide in the U.S., doesn't it? And the complexities of the whole Ukraine-Russia situation.
What about the general public? Beyond those who are already set in their political camps, what's the reaction been like?
Just as divided as you'd expect, I guess. You've got people who see him as a decisive leader, the right experience for a crisis. And then others, they see him as more of the same, an extension of Trump's foreign policy. The kind of thing they think will just make tensions worse and undermine any attempts at diplomacy.
So it seems like Kellogg's appointment has just deepened those existing divides, reflecting the broader debate about America's role in this conflict and how to deal with Russia.
Yeah, for sure. This is a whole deep dive into Keith Kellogg. It's shown us a complicated figure, decorated military leader, tons of experience, but also controversial. Those ties to Trump and that peace through strength approach, it's definitely sparked debate.
And his nomination as Special Envoy. It's really put a spotlight on the question of how to achieve peace in Ukraine, how to deal with Russia.
At the end of the day, will his approach lead to peace or just more tension? We just don't know yet.
It's something to think about. We've looked at his background, his policy positions, the controversy, and the reactions. Now it's up to you to weigh the evidence. Consider all those different perspectives.
There are no easy answers when it comes to international relations, that's for sure. This conflict, it's multifaceted, no simple solutions, Kellogg's way of doing things, just one possible path forward.
So as we wrap up this look at Keith Kellogg's nomination, we have to remember this is a really fluid situation, complex. And his appointment as Special Envoy, it's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle, right?
Exactly. His impact, it all depends on so many things. How the situation in Ukraine develops, how Russia reacts to him being in this position, and of course, what other key players on the global stage decide to do.
We've covered a lot of ground. His background, his policies, the controversies, the reactions. Now it's really up to each of you listening to think about all this. Weigh the evidence. Consider the different perspectives.
It's important to remember, in international relations, there are rarely easy answers. The Ukraine-Russia conflict, multifaceted, no easy solutions. Kellogg's approach, it's just one potential path.
As you follow this story, think about the long-term implications of his appointment for the U.S., for its allies, and for the world as a whole.
How will his approach shape U.S. involvement, lead to a peaceful solution? Or will we see things escalate even further?
And what about his loyalty to Trump? Will that help him or hurt him when it comes to being an effective mediator? Will that peace through strength idea resonate with Russia? Or just make them more aggressive?
Big questions, ones that will play out in the months and years to come. So stay informed, engage with different points of view, and keep digging deeper into this conflict. There's a lot to unpack.
And remember, to really understand something as complex as this, it takes continuous learning, a willingness to challenge your own assumptions. We hope this deep dive has given you a good starting point for forming your own opinions. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.